So again, if implementing that more formal request process that I just talked about for a report and data flow, a request for new report and data flow processes has an amazing ROI. So all the interesting organizational knowledge about what and how you use your data is decided every time a data request is processed, right? So if you've got your report developers or report writers who are doing any sort of diligence, they're working to make sure that what they're producing is doing it correctly and calculating things and it's well understood to them. And so what you want to do is like capturing that knowledge at that point in time. At the time that person is building that report and coordinating with the requester and creating those new deliverables, those changes, it is just a marginal additional effort to put that into whatever knowledge base we have, so that a year later someone can say, what is this report doing? Particularly if I then leave the institution or the organization, right? So that it is slightly more effort, but not necessarily. I mean, because if I was going to write it down, I have to write it down somewhere. But it is infinitely easier than a year later someone comes and says, hey, what is this report? And I have to go kind of recreate like what I had done and why and how, right? So the question then is like, how are you managing this process of report requests? And are you capturing this know-how of the decisions that are being made as people are doing it? And are you, somehow standardizing the exchange between the requester and the developer? Or even if it's the one person doing it themselves, somehow standardizing how you might capture and document that information in a way that can get reused later and also produce trust for the deliverable that I have. Now, another thing around this that I think is an important aspect of this request is that we have this term called emergent content, right? So when I am defining a report or an ETL extract or something, part of a good diligent specification and design for that report includes me making sure that I have references and citations for the data that's on my report to glossary definitions. I would say we work with a lot of colleges. I would say, if you had a student that turned in a term paper to a faculty member and they didn't have, glossary and footnotes and citations for their, for all of their quotes or calculations or, scientific, whatever the same, that would not be good for their grade. But more often than not, when people are creating reports and sharing business information around within their organization, they aren't doing that themselves, right? And that creates these conflicts between sometimes, if someone else is creating a report that's using different calculations and we don't know that we don't have citations to say we're using the same reference, that creates issues, but also just creates a lack of transparency and trust. So the emergent content of defining a report is that I want to make sure that I have glossary definitions for all the things, all the relevant or slightly complicated stuff I might have on that report. So in building a new report, I'll go see, hey, is there already a definition for this thing that the requester wants? If so, great. I'm gonna, reference that glossary definition and then build my report based on that definition. If not, I will add that glossary definition, and maybe that's gonna go out to some other steward to get approved or whatever. Hold on, sorry. Or not. But the point is that for every report that I do, I might add a few things to my glossary. And I will tell you right now that, and this is a fact, that sometimes I get a lot of pushback on this, but it is often a request when we go to implement the data cookbook. People say, we want to start with definitions. We want to start writing definitions. And I'm usually saying, in my experience, whatever work that you put in to just write glossary definitions in a vacuum is wasted time, as opposed to the work that you do in creating glossary definitions as emergent content from defining and curating your reports or your extracts or actual data deliverables. And that's a great way to prioritize your time too. You're going to get better glossary definitions. You're going to get more appropriate content. So, and there's other emergent content that comes out of that, but the point in time of the data request for reports or changes of reports or extracts is the #1 moment where the magic happens, as I say here, where you're going to get the best information out for not only documenting this report, but a bunch of other emergent content that is associated to making sure that the knowledge base is well situated for all of the information necessary to understand how that report